My name is Chris Nelson. My site is evolveconsciousness.org, and this is another episode of the Great Work Launchpad, Ep.5, Barriers to Initiation, the Shadow Work, Part 3. And we're going to look at more around self-loathing and peripheral around there. And today is May 14th, 2025, 9 p.m. And I'll put in the Video Ninja link into the chat for anyone who wants to come on by. So I'm going to start to do more, try to formalize an introduction here. The Great Work Launchpad, what is it about? Well, we're launching, as you can see, there's a rocket, and that's the Great Work at the top. That replaces the rocket. So it's launching. So we're going to the pad, we're going to launch up. And it's to help people launch themselves into the Great Work. And, getting initiated into doing that work. So a lot of people have the knowledge, but they haven't activated themselves into creating the content, creating ideally formalized content. It's important to get down deep enough to explain the concepts so they can be understood and why they're true. Not just like this Great Work Launchpad and just talking about topics, that's good. But we can only go so deep. And when you create your own content, that's when you can get deeper. Get deeper into it. And so that's the ultimate goal. But you can start off anywhere. You can start off doing videos like this with other people, get together with other people, or even on here. That's why I have this, is, you can, this is an open invite. Anyone can come on, so you can, hey, you want to talk for 2 minutes, present a topic, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, come on by. You can also, if you need help on ideas, I have a Telegram and all the description links. There's nobody there, but if you want to come ask me or email me from my site, from the contact page, and what can I do? And hey, Derek, can you mute yourself? Yeah, I hear you're grinding there. All right. So you don't know what to do? Well, I can give you homework assignments. You need someone to push you, to make you do something. Well, I can give you homework assignments, give you an idea, and you write a 500-word explanation of a topic, and then you can even come present it. But so that's my spiel for the intro. Remind people what this is about. And so here we have some recurring co-presenters here. We have Brendan Spencer and Derek Bartolicelli. Thanks for coming by, guys. How you doing?
Howdy. How's it going, Chris and Derek?
Yeah, bonjour. Sorry for I didn't realize you popped us on live at that time. But I'd be grinding in so many ways. But anyways, Brandon, great to see you. Sorry I missed y'all last night, but sleep patterns are not the best these days. But anyways.
Cool. So in this series of the barriers to initiation, shadow work, the first one we had was on self-respect, and then the second one last week was a bit more on self-respect, I think, and then going into self-love and self-loathing. I think there was a bit of that in the first one too. So now I have more, we can talk more about self-loathing. I have some notes on some things that we can talk about on that topic and why it's, why is it important? Why do we give a shit about self-loathing? Well, self-loathing is like the corollary to, as a negative aspect, to the positive aspect of self-love. And self-love, as we've been talking about, is when you care enough, care enough about truth and moral truth and yourself. And in that situation where you realize our global situation, our state of being right now is presently in the state of enslavement. So you care enough about that state that you are enslaved, and so you care enough that you want to not be enslaved, and that makes you care enough to try to end the enslavement, hence the ending of evil, the higher level morality level too, as I refer to it, and that's the great work. And when you're not doing that, well, that means there's still some self-loathing there, because you might know everything I just said, but you're not activated in doing it. So that means you don't care enough for that care, that internal flame within you, to motivate and drive your actions. You're still missing that next level care. And so that means there's still however much self-loathing as the opposite corollary to that self-love, that you don't care enough about your own state of enslavement, or if you have children, that your own children are enslaved, to take the time out of, everyone's got a busy life, you take the time and you dedicate yourself to trying to, as I said before, ideally formalize content to explain things more deeply for other people to understand, and increase the voice of truth, make that volume of truth bigger than it already is. And so that self-loathing is something that people need to do that. That's part of the shadow work, because that's part of yourself that you're not facing and you haven't overcome. And so this involves apathy. So I'll let you guys jump in here, and I'll just give some ideas, and I can add more after if things go quiet there. I'll not talk continuously. But so self-loathing, ideas around that, apathy, and relating to care for truth, and we can talk about the Hiram Abiff and the three ruffians, apathy. So it translates into apathy, ignorance, and cowardice or laziness combined. So whoever wants to start can add your whatever you want to say about those things.
Just writing down some quick notes. Always thankful to come on here. So hell, we'll jump in. So pretty much, another word that people usually associate with self-loathing is self-hatred. Hold on, I got to get this white screen off my monitor. There we go. Yeah, the white screen was just hitting me in the face. But yeah, self-hatred. That's one of the more terms that people may be more familiar with, and self-hatred is a thing that we are. It's like how we're conditioned in, and a lot of times with self-hatred, you're talking about negative thoughts. And it's really, one of the things that, have manifest self-hatred, self-loathing, the lack of self-worth, is we have all these negative thoughts, that's constantly running through our minds, and we're constantly, being bombarded with, um, you know, um, these fearful thoughts, something that we kind of talked about, how the past couple of weeks, but these negative thoughts, constantly, materialize, and they create more forms of emotion, which leads to those forms of ignorance, apathy, and cowardice. But these negative thoughts, if not controlled, will lead to more self-suffering. And we see like this, like the self-hatred being manifested in so many different ways, like in society, not just with the destruction of our own consciousness, but like we see what people are just focused on. It's just all negativity, lack of consciousness, lack of morality, and kind of leads into this fixation with death, and evil, and the whole death complex that people seem to love. But the whole self-hatred is even more negative, because it's like a form, if gone to extremes, could be like a form of soul suffering. to where like a person almost kind of seems, dead or soulless, to where they don't really even care about their own, physical body, don't care about their own physical well-being. And then, we talked about apathy, that, not being able to care. It's one thing for someone not to care, outwardly, but for you not to care, to want to fix your own, self, to want to fix your own thoughts, and try to control those, have negative thoughts, and want to fix your own behaviors. That right there is even more, devious, because it's like, where is your sense of being human at? Your ability, your essence to feel, your that human like element that we all should have. It's like, where's that at? Where has that gone? Is that the part, how that's missing, which leads to more and more self-hatred? Because if you can't make these things, like relatable to you, and like, you want to fix your own problems, fix your own health, and fix your own, psyche, then how can you even want to try to help somebody else? So this whole self-hatred has really got to be healed. I mean, because it's really what we are talking about, is a means of healing. And these negative thoughts gets conditioned in us at such a very early age. And Chris, talked about the whole trauma, and a lot of things, held the past couple of weeks, hell, don't want to just keep, repeating myself. But yeah, the whole self-hatred, man, is a thing. And that leads to, like, these things of, I'm not good enough, who's going to listen toward me, just these negative thoughts that are constantly running in our mind, that aren't really being controlled. You've really got to learn to start to harness, and start to filter out those, have negative thoughts, and start to, I guess you can say, start to control, how you think, and, start to be a more, like, generator of controlling, those thoughts. So you're not being constantly bombarded with that mind chatter, that fucking, just minds just jumping to, all over the place. There's no focus, there's no balance, there's no, filtration. So yeah, the whole negative thoughts that are leading to more self-hatred.
Mind if I piggyback off that, Chris? And thank you so much for having this set up, having us on, and all that. Always an honor to chat with you. And I had written down childhood narratives, and some of these voices are stuck in our heads well into our adult lives, and they stay there, along with some of the recessed memories and all those aspects that we cover, talking about shadow work and all that. So yeah, that came up in a recent chat we had with Brendan Byrne, talking about hypnotherapy and how to really, tap into that unconscious, subconscious mind, and that can really help confront some of those childhood narratives for what they are, and see them objectively, so you can resolve them, heal them, and get out of those inner blockages, to have that proper inner dialogue that you have within yourself, right? And as above, so below, as within, so without, right? So the inner dialogue is going to be kind of conveying into the exterior domain, right? So that needs to be fixed first and foremost, especially people are going to be coming up onto the mic and speaking as we are, or, any kind of video essay, whatever, right? And going to apathy, I wrote down some words that can correlate, I guess, of just how does one become in such a state of apathy? Is it their lack of emotional intelligence, their lack of care, compassion? Is it the abundance of indifference they have within themselves and the world around them and people and stuff? Are they numb to life? That kind of stuff. And it's like, have they taken the time to actually ask themselves, what do they actually care about in this world, and focus that attention in the center of their chest? Because that's where it has to start, from the heart, to have that care, to have a proper caring relationship full of proper love and stuff, and have the trifecta love, right? In Greek, got philos, eros and agape, to really put forth that, life force energy behind one's great work, or just, life path, right? So yeah, make it short and sweet for now.
Yeah, I'll add on the hatred just to make it clear. We're not saying that you're like, I hate myself so much, I'm worthless, I'm a piece of shit. That's not what we're like. That could be the case. Um, but we're saying that inside, that, like Brandon was saying, that you don't even care about that situation that you're in and wanting to do something about it and healing from that lack of care. So it's an indication that there's like an aspect of hatred in terms of a lack of care and love for yourself, for your own existence, and the condition you find yourself in, that we all find ourselves in, which is of enslavement, various degrees of enslavement. And if you're not going to develop that care and love for yourself, then how could you possibly have it for others? How could you want that care and love for their own existence to be free from enslavement if you don't even have it for yourself and you're not even willing to do it for yourself? And yeah, I think that's the self-hatred aspect is a good angle to look at it from, the self-hatred / self-loathing. And it's something people don't think about, certainly certainly not in the whole world, and let alone in, not even in the whatever, the truth freedom movement. People don't even consider that as their inner psychological state that they're currently living in, and the need to get out of it and do the work to get out of that darkness, to lead themselves out. Yeah, so I guess another thing that I'll mention for self-loathing is so in my presentation on morality, I termed the higher level morality level 2, and so that's represented by the sacred masculine self-defense. And self-defense can be physical self-defense, or it can be the intellectual self-defense, which is doing the great work and trying to get people morally united and apply pressure to get other people to stop what they're doing. And then if they don't, eventually, if we reach enough numbers, well, we can make them stop physically through physical self-defense. And the corollary to that, as the opposite, would be pacifism. And I termed it, I think, in my pillars of darkness, as opposed to the pillars of enlightenment, the sacred feminine, the sacred masculine, non-violence or non-aggression, and self-defense. Well, the pillars of darkness are pacifism, and on the masculine side is domination, being a predator, dominating. And that's master and slave. The pacifist does nothing to defend themselves, so they're in slave think, and the dominator is in the master think, where they can think they can just dominate and control others to make them subsume their will to their will as the one who's doing the domination. And that's what people are stuck in. They might think that, oh, I'm not a pacifist, I defend myself. Well, maybe in like a physical self-defense, but you're not engaging in that intellectual self-defense because you're not in that constant state of a physical self-defense at all times. But we are always being imposed that slavery. So you're not always defending yourself against that slavery in a physical sense. That would just probably result in the termination, the extinguishment of your life, because the powers that are united in keeping the enslavement going are larger than you as one individual. That's why we need numbers to make this change, either through intellectual self-defense, by growing the voice of truth and influencing others to stop their behaviors, or as the less preferable is the physical self-defense, to make them stop. So yeah, that's one aspect. People can think of it more deeply in a different way. Do you want to be a pacifist and just do nothing to end evil? Because that's what you're doing if you're not doing the great work of trying to get people to understand, what's right, what's wrong, what's moral, what's evil, what's good, and all that is helping to end the evil, because that's going to influence their behavior, so that if they are engaging in it, then they're going to learn to not do it themselves, and eventually learn to do that work that influenced them. And then it grows and grows and grows. It's being a link in a chain for moral truth and trying to restore freedom. I don't know if anyone wanted to add anything to that, and we could talk about, if not, you can go into the Hiram Abiff, apathy, ignorance, cowardice, laziness, how this factors in, maybe.
Yeah, not sure why my Stream Deck is acting weird. Can you hear me? Okay, yeah. Stupid Windows. Yeah, when Derek was talking, and what Chris was saying, this idea of boundaries just popped into my head, because it's really what we are, talking about. And a individual, who's stuck in that, that state of self-loathing, I would say, doesn't have, true boundaries, and they don't understand the importance of boundaries, because that is, understanding both aspect of how the masculine and the feminine, and you respect those boundaries. And then if someone oversteps those boundaries, then you, would use, health defense to, to stop their, aggression. But in that state of self-loathing, it's like you don't even have boundaries upon your own, self, on what you will let other people, help do to you. So if you realize that the situation or the condition is slavery, then you would at least have enough self-care and a lot of, self-worth to say, hey, I'm not a slave. Hey, I'm going to, fight for freedom. Hey, this is where I draw the line. This is, have my boundary, and I'm not going to let anybody, step over that line or, transgress or encroach upon that line. So then therefore, you would go into, have the means of defense, because that's really what we're doing. Is this is a means of self-defense, because we don't want to be enslaved. We don't want to see others enslaved, and we are using our voices to say no, because that is one of the greatest means of defense, is using your voice to speak out and setting those boundaries and setting up those boundaries. So when you say no, this is where my line is, the saying, you will letting others know, where that boundary is. And that's, why you have those, how I would say, um, kind of like a negative form of the trivium, with the ignorance, apathy, and cowardly, all three of those things step over, boundaries. Because if you are in a state of ignorance, you don't care. You don't want to know, that boundaries exist. If you are in that state of, apathy, you don't care enough to even, to even ask, hell, what those parameters are for those boundaries. And if you're in a state of cowardice, you may actually know hell about those boundaries, but you're never, will defend them or use defense if someone encroaches upon, those set boundaries. So this kind of, gets into the whole three aspects of unconsciousness, is what I would call them: the whole ignorance, apathy, and cowardliness, or being a coward.
Cheers. Yeah. I'll just add on before Chris, we get into cowardice more. Possibly, I could be wrong on this, but I just wrote this down, thinking about the scale of polarity in regards to apathetic people, and thinking about like the complete unconscious, dead walker, ignorant person, whatever. And then you have like the person who's been seeking the truth and all this stuff, and maybe, I guess the term would be like they got black pilled or whatever, right? I don't know why people have to obsess over pills so much. I mean, the Matrix was like 30 years ago, guys. We can find out better analogies, but you know what I mean, right? So
there are no better analogies than the Matrix.
fair enough, yeah. I will not argue with that, but yeah. Just hearing pills all the time is kind of funny. Anyways, and what colors, man? So can we spot someone who's apathetic, or self-loathing rather, by them? Yeah, what's up, Theo? Uh,
Yo.
when you see people that that just hate others, like the humanity haters and that kind of stuff, like I can't stand people and this and that. Are those mental and emotional projections of their own issues going on? And then I'm sure you've heard, even some friends and this and that, and it's more in the lighter side of thing of I can't stand people and this and that, and it's just coming from the aspect of someone that's gotten over a lot of the programming and all that stuff, yet they're just inundated by a bunch of ignoramuses and that kind of stuff. The ignorati, right? Or whatever it's called. So yeah, how can people strike a balance, especially those that are keyed into and that have had some pills on the good side, right? And are, activated some kind of gnosis within them, yet, they're still just really not feeling themselves and others and all that stuff. So yeah, it's an interesting conundrum, I suppose. But yeah, what's good, Theo?
Hey guys, yeah, good to see you all. Yeah, it's a good topic, the self-loathing. I think it's a very, very, very common problem with almost everyone in this society. The society is kind of engineered for self-loathing because, yeah, if you hate yourself, if you hate everything, you think just the world is just going to hell and the sun will explode and there will be a nuclear war and all this shit, and like what's the point of all of it? Then you're just powerless, you're just going by the motions, you just seeking pleasure and comfort, and you have no spirituality, you have no purpose, and that's a perfect slave, I suppose, in a fake free society, right? So yeah, you know obviously the great work is first and foremost to empower yourself, and once you feel truly empowered, once you truly feel that you have purpose, that you love yourself, that you have love for everything, you have agape, that's when you can truly then do the great work also outside and try to inspire people to be the same.
Yeah, those good points on the whole black pilled. There's no point to any of it. There's nothing you can do, and you're disempowered. So you realize that you do have some power. There is something you can do, and stuff like this is what you can do, is to try to increase the voice of truth, because it's true. People get I was going to say a limited perspective, but they get like a false overall perspective of how reality generation works. As I visualize in my circle of life, as I've called it earlier, in that circle with the trivium and the trinity of consciousness connected. You yourself aren't going to bring an end to slavery. You yourself aren't going to, make everything change. And so people just look at it that way, like me, myself, well, I can't do anything. So the way things are, I can't change that. And so there's nothing I can do. I'm just going to keep living for myself. And that's another aspect that we can talk about, is this selfish living. And then they just care about themselves and those around them. And it's perplexing. It's an interesting inner conflict, and that's one of the things I have noted here too, because they still have aspects of self-loathing and self-hatred, as we've been talking about, but they're also mostly just concerned with themselves. So it's not that, oh, they only care about themselves and those around them, their friends and their family, and oh, well, then they have self-love and self-care. Well, no, they have it in more of a negative sense, not in a like dark evil sense necessarily, but that negative sense is making them focus just on what they can do for them, or what they can do for their family, or what they can do for their friends and other people they know. And they're not looking at what they can do for everyone in a global sense, in terms of the reality we live in. That's how this aspect that they're not realizing is the co-created aspect of the world we live in. So even before, at one point there wasn't governments. It was dictators or emperors or whatever system, and then they changed it to deceive us and make it, hey, it's we the people. You guys are in power. Hey, don't you feel empowered? Yeah, it's great. And so to make that happen, it's not like one guy was like, okay, governments are here. They're in reality. Ta-da! I'm the one because I got tons of money. I made it happen. Well, no, it's everyone deciding that, oh, that sounds like a good idea. Okay, let's get on board. Let's get on that bandwagon. And well, that becomes the way everything is because everyone accepts it as the way it's going to be, whereas it wasn't like that before. And that's where the power actually is in what I've called the principle of quantity, or the principle of the majority. Whatever the majority are doing is what's going to happen. So if people want to do bad things, then the bad things are going to be happen. If they want to allow other people to do bad things, well, then they're going to allow other people to do bad things. And if they want to stop them, well, then they can stop them. They can do whatever, and whatever they do is what ends up getting done. And so that needs a quantity of people. It needs more people doing it. And we're not at that point, because that behavior is motivated and driven by the internal realm. As within, so without. So that internal mental state is not present in the majority of people. Hence the need for doing the great work to influence and bring this information to more people, increase that voice of truth, so that they can have the opportunity to access the information from different people, different sources, different ways of explaining it, and then they can potentially be influenced by it. Otherwise, if they're not going to be influenced by it, well, then they're not going to change their behavior and the necessary methods that will potentially result in that outer world changing in a different direction. They're just going to keep going in the same direction, keep focusing on themselves and on those around them, and trying to impact. All of their energy and their time and their attention is going to be directed towards either themselves or those in their immediate vicinity, and they're not enlarging that compassion and that focus and that agape, is that caring, about something outside of you that's bigger than you. And we're not talking about caring about government or being in the police or the military or, all these things that people give themselves over, and they think that they're connected to something larger than themselves. We're talking about the ultimate thing to be connected to, and the truth itself, as caring for truth, and especially moral truth. As I mentioned, not caring about football or baseball or hockey statistics, but caring about quality truths, which is the most important, are moral truths. And that will propel us towards a greater quality of life for everyone. So it's about not just how you can use moral truth to impact your life, but how you can use moral truth for an impact on everyone's life. And that's the wider care and the wider sense of love, of including all, because freedom is for all, and freedom can only be created by all, for all. You're not going to be creating true freedom while you just focus on yourself. You're not going to have true freedom in an area if some people are being enslaved, because true freedom is a representation of the aggregate. And when you sum all that aggregate, well, you're not going to have that pure blue bucket of paint. You're going to have some red mixed in there. So it's not going to be pure blue. It's still going to be mostly blue, and mostly everyone's going to have their freedom, but your area isn't going to be an area of true freedom. And you could be next. And that's what happened with government. You know, they might have started, or long ago with authority. The authority only impacted some people, and they accepted it because they got benefits, and then it just impacted more people, and they just went along with it, maybe because of the benefits. Who knows? You know, when the aliens created us or whatever, however it happened, if it happened that way, we don't really know, but interesting stuff to look into. Yeah, so there's that selfish living, and there's also the like Brendan mentioned, unconsciousness. So that apathy, ignorance, cowardice, and laziness, the negative aspects of the trivium and unconsciousness, and where you're just focusing on yourself, and you know, you could think that's self-love or self-care, but it's actually, you know, you're disunited within yourself because you care so much about yourself and those around you, but you're still in self-loathing and still in self-hatred. So this is a contradiction within, because you haven't gone deep enough into your psyche and self-examination process, self-reflection, and that inner work, so that you still have an aspect that's within you that contradicts how you think of yourself, which is, you know, people who love themselves and they're selfish. Well, that's in contradiction to actually having self-love and self-care, even though people might think of it like that. Oh, they love themselves too much. Well, they don't. They don't have that true self-love and that true self-care. It's a corrupted form of it. Yeah, so if anyone wants to bounce off of that.
Real quick, I was just thinking about one of the toxic axioms that gets infested or gets conditioned in our mind is, you know, this axiom of, you know, you aren't capable of changing yourself or changing anything, you know, in this world. And that's what I think a lot of the self-hatred, you know, stems from, is, you know, these people feel like, you know, well, who's going to want to listen to me? You know, what can I do? You know, I'm just this one, you know, small ant in this ocean of, you know, her possibility. You know, what can I do? You know, hell, again, that's the axiom, you know, that incorrect, you know, axiom that you cannot change yourself and that you cannot, you know, change anything. And that right there is one of the biggest things that will lead to a state of, you know, self-loathing, because you as a individual who is capable of free will creation is more than capable of change. You know, like that's what is always associated with, you know, creativity, because you are creating something, and whenever you create something, you're actually changing something too. So then therefore you as a human being, you just being in existence always, you know, has that potential, but it is only in your thinking, only in the ignorance, you know, in your mindset, that worldview, which, you know, which um breaks down that, you know, hellability. It starts to erode. So with over time, and, you know, with enough repetition, you know, with enough, you know, being, you know, told this, you know, have told that, and all of that conditioning, then you start to actually believe, you know, the axiom is actually true. And therefore, you know, when it comes to, you know, truly teaching, you know, and trying to, you know, end slavery, you know, we have these, you know, these same ideas that are being told to us. What can I do? You know, I'm just one person who's going to listen to me. And hell, again, have you embodied that false axiom of you are not capable of changing yourself, and you are not capable of changing anything in this world? That's something that people really you know, have to ask themselves. Have you bought into that false axiom, that false dogmatic worldview? Because if you're not capable of changing yourself, then are you truly a real human being? A true real human being, you know, with essence and meaning.
Yeah, got to keep it true. Yeah, Chris, I really appreciate your slides, in general, but yeah, those slides with the dark aspects of the pillars of enlightenment, those are really great. When I first saw that, I was like, damn, like that was really cool. I don't think I saw anything like that before. And I had written down some notes just real well. Actually, so I think a lot of these things stem from just one's worldview in their perspective of things, and that could dictate whether they're going to be optimistic or pessimistic or somewhere in between, whatever. This lukewarmness, that's not really where people need to be. We got to be, affirmative with our actions that are aligned. And if you've done that inner work, then it's cultivated, right? So you're just operating from there, right? But there has to be that starting point. So here we are. And to really, cultivate a proper worldview and perspective, it takes a ton of research, and as within, so without as well. Like digging deep within your soul. You know, who are you on this map and all this stuff? Yeah, we're all little drops of water in this big ocean of consciousness. Yet, everyone has their unique frequency. How are people fine tuning their own frequency, that sound song vibration that they contain within their templating DNA complex, right? So people need to not be afraid to delve into what's there to be discovered within themselves, right? And there's the whole fear of the unknown and all this stuff, of course, right? And I'm alluding to cowardice, right? And I wrote down some things in regards to some of the aspects that seem to crop up with this aspect of people, and that they can be kind of passive aggressive sometimes. They can be hesitant with their decision making, their actions and interactions, and that kind of stuff. They can harbor a good amount of stagnant energy, I suppose. And they could be lacking that conviction and confidence within themselves, uh, authority over their own lives, that proper authority, like they are the author of their book of life and not the authority of anyone else, right? And responsibility. How many people are afraid to take responsibility of their own lives, right, and their actions, and uh, sleep in the bed that they made, right? Reap what they sow, don't you know? And yeah. Theo, what you know?
Yeah, so I like the point Chris Nelson brought up at the end there, that if you have true self-love, or like I think you were hinting at that if you have true self-love, you would do the great work. You would understand that not that, like you mentioned, that false self-love, where it's just about hedonism basically, and fulfilling I don't know, whatever societal expectations there are, and whatever your mama said you should be. I don't know what. Anyway, no, when you really understand true self-love, you really understand that, first of all, that what you do affects other people, and what other people do affects you. So if you have true self-love, you would understand that other people need to have true self-love as well, so they treat you good as well. I know it's a bit of a mind bender, but I think that's what we're hinting at there, with that the true self-love, because it's based in truth. And if everyone is all loving themselves in a fake way, so they're living in a fake fantasy world where hedonism is the most important thing, and government is the best thing ever, and wars are okay, they must happen, it's the necessary evil, then they don't truly love themselves, obviously. They don't truly love the world, obviously, and then they don't truly love you. So how can you have that's true love going on when there's all this fakery, all these falsities, fallacies, and all those things. So yeah, I think that's why this education of truth, care for truth, as you are spearheading, Chris, and of course everyone in the One Great Work Network is aspiring to do as well, and people who are looking to just do the great work in their own way, whether or not they're affiliated with it, it doesn't matter. It's not a club. It's for everyone to do if you want that true self-love, if you want that true, truly free, truly moral and beautiful world that we're trying to cultivate.
Yeah. The more people that get involved, the greater chance we have of eventually, however long it takes, of achieving the goal. And then, well, we're going to die. And if more people don't come in to take up that torch, carry the torch, we got to pass the flame and spread the light, become more light bearers, carry that light of knowledge, the positive knowledge. Well, the negative knowledge too, but for the goal of the positive work of how to get ourselves unfucked. And yeah, it's all that percentage. The percentage got to go up. And the more people that join in, the more the percentage goes up, and it's got to carry on through the generations. And this aspect of the selfishness or hedonism, the pursuit of pleasure, and some people might not be completely pursuing pleasure to that extent of like hedonism as it's usually understood, but the pleasure trap of just wanting to do things for yourself, and it's all about the desire of getting what they want personally for themselves as an individual, as an ego personality identity construct that they're formed into. They just want things for themselves or for those they're close with, their family or their friends. And that's what they focus on. That's what they invest their time and their attention, and they get a return based on that time and attention put forth on those mostly selfish endeavors and those connected to them in their personal lives. And they don't want to sacrifice to do what's necessary, which is the sacrifice of their time and attention towards those personal things, those things they want to do in their personal lives. They don't want to sacrifice that. They don't want to take that allocation of time, however much it is, 1 hour per day or a half hour, whatever, and instead of putting it over here into the selfish pile of you or those around you, to put it into the great work pile. And if you do that an hour a day, or do 5 hours on the weekend, I don't know, and then eventually you could do something. But it takes that sacrifice that you need to take from somewhere else, that thing you're going to sacrifice that you want for yourselves, and that time and attention that you want there, you have to sacrifice it and have it as an offering for the great work. You have to give that burnt offering. You have to burn it away, in a sense, metaphorically. And instead of going over here, well, you have to, I'm offering it to you, the God of truth. And then the God of truth takes your sacrifice, and well, that's where your time and attention is going over here into that instead. And that's what people, how many thousands and thousands of people Passio has, there's a lot of subscribers, people view his stuff, and this is what he gets mad about, is people say, even the people who haven't gone through it, or maybe not even heard, they say they want freedom. Oh, I want freedom. Yeah, freedom. Vote for Trump and whatever other stupid shit they do, and just focusing on the effects, or going down the wrong hole of just wanting to repeat the control system with someone else as the master for 4 years. But they're not fulfilling the requirements. Well, you want something, but how do you make it happen? So they say they want something to happen, but they don't even know how to make it happen. So how can you make something happen if you don't even know how to make it happen? And that's what Pacifist just gets mad about, is that
Yeah.
you're too fucking dumb. You don't even, you say you want something, but you don't even know how to make it happen. What are the requirements? Like, it's like, I want to eat a nice bowl of cereal. Well, what are the requirements? You need to gather, well, what are you going to put in it? You're going to put this, you're going to put that. You know, I want a fruit salad. I want this. Well, what kind of fruit? There's requirements to make things happen. Well, what's the requirements for freedom? People don't even understand how to even create the requirements, because they don't even understand what freedom is in the first place. It's just a word, and it's just taken as a selfish, it's just bounced back against themselves as like, oh, well, freedom for me is having more time in my life and retiring at 55 and having a few $1 million, and then I can go on trips to here and trips to there and and take care of my kids and they can go to college, and that's freedom. Well, no, that's like, yeah, more financial freedom, but that's not what freedom is. And so they don't even understand freedom. And because they don't even understand freedom, well, they're not going to understand the requirements to get that thing that they don't even have a definition for. So they're completely lost. And so what they actually want, when they say they want freedom, but they're not going to fulfill the requirements because they have no fucking clue what they're even doing, what they actually want in the end is, oh, so you're not doing anything to end government or police or the military or the control system, the enslavement system. So what you want is more of that, right? You're not trying to do anything about it. You're just voting for another master to give orders to other people and just keep the whole system of enslavement and control going. So you want more government, you want more police, you want more military to go steal resources so you can benefit from, steal it from over there so you can gain advantage. And so you just want to keep slavery going. And so that means you just want slavery. And you want death and you want chaos to be around in the world, perpetuated by what you want. And that makes you evil, because you want that to happen. It doesn't matter if you don't realize that what you want is slavery, or that what you want is going to be perpetuating death and chaos and decay. You want the things that are going to create that. And whether you're ignorant of it or not, that's still what you want. And that makes you evil internally, because you're advocating for those things to happen by your support of those systems of control and enslavement. So you in the end, comes back to the self-love and the self-loathing and the self-hatred is, well, if you want those things, then you don't want things to be good for yourself and your future descendants, because you're just ensuring that they're going to get more, or probably worse, that they're going to get the degree of enslavement is going to ratchet up and the degree of freedom is going to go down progressively, and they're going to be worse off. So, yeah. Anyone want to say something else?
Well, freedom to me means, man, when I hear that, when you ask someone to define the word and then they say, well, to me, it means this. And I'm like, oh, man, you were really missing the true meaning, the true definitive meaning, because it's not what it means to you or, to any individual. It's what it means in reality. So, yeah. But when someone says that, you just listen to the words, like they're coming from this subjective, ego, approach. They're so tied to their ego that when you ask them what a word means, they tie it to themselves, as if they are the ones, who get to define and make up the definition of, those words. But earlier Theo was talking, and then he said something about like the false love. And yeah, this is something that I've always said is, like we live in a world that gives you proxy love. It gives you fake love. And I don't think many of us have really experienced true, real love. It seems to be something that is dying out like freedom, because a lot of people will say they love, their partner, will say they love, their spouse, or, their kids, or, or the family member or whoever. Then in the next breath, they'll say something that's totally contradictory. And then you look at their actions, and they're out there voting, doing immoral behaviors hell, arresting people, like these order followers don't realize those actions that they're doing, someone is going to do those same actions upon their loved ones. So it's like, is it really truly love? And, I'm not talking about, just like eros or, philios or, like the love for your, son. I'm talking about like true love, to where you put doing the right thing over any other her relationship, true agape. You love truth and you have that principle of wanting to do the right thing first over any kind of, one-on-one, her relationship. So yeah, I just wanted to bring that up. Is we live in a proxy love world. And let me see, what else did I have? Yeah. Oh yeah, one thing talking about the ego and all this stuff. Another reason why this shadow work is important, because when you get into this line of work, when you start, dealing with other people and individuals, if you have not done at least a modicum of internal work, it will bleed out onto this kind of work, and other people will start to see it. We've seen it in other people. You get into groups and you start to see certain ways people act, and it's all telling, because with enough time, everything starts to show. People's true colors do start to come out. So that's why it's so important to start doing this work, not just because it's the right thing to do and the correct thing to do and it's the required thing to do, but if you're really going to do this work, then it comes with the territory, because if not, you just will not last long, because those traumas, those inconsistency, those fears will always start to bleed out and creep up to the surface and bleed out onto other things.
Yeah, real talk. And this is kind of what I mentioned in the video that I finally finalized after like just putting this off for over a month. Kind of talking about the dynamics of some of this infighting and stuff and all that jazz. And to what Brandon's talking about, and it's just in general. Anytime you open up your mouth, in general, you're exposing your level of consciousness and awareness and where you're at with your inner work and all that stuff. And yeah, over time, as Brandon said, you can see certain patterns with people, with the words they use. Are they congruent with their actions and stuff? Are they emotionally in control of them? All that stuff. So yeah. And yeah, the whole fake love stuff and all that. How much is it lip service? To what degree, right? And what delusions are they saying it under? And yeah, again, it kind of goes back to some of these worldviews that I was talking about. And spending the proper time, as Chris was talking about. Yeah, time is so valuable and important, and people squander it like it's the Netflix binge fest or whatever, right? So yeah, I see that people can be quite selfish with their squandered time. It's kind of like the My Freedom movement. No, this is my time. I want to spend it how I want to, and just I just want to tune in and cop out, as that one saying in the 90s used to go, right? I know folks ain't really watching the boob tube anymore because there's so much streaming and all that jazz, right? But regardless, there's an overabundance of distractions at the same time with all this stuff. Shit, power just went out for a second. Sorry. So how can one really get a foothold into flipping the script and looking to purge their garbage time into valuable time? Like anyone's free time away from work, what do? As soon as you get up from bed, do you have to have a breakfast and that kind of stuff? Are you able to listen to podcasts or something like that of substance while you have to clean, cook, or do any kind of chores and all that stuff, or during your commutes and all that stuff? We need to optimize our time in so many different ways, right? And like how much value are you getting out of the latest poop culture crap anyways, right? Or movies and all that stuff. I'm not saying they're worthless, but compared to what we've been researching and all that stuff, like come on now. And yes, there are great allegories, as you know, Chris, you mentioned with the Matrix, that totally makes sense and can bring things back to basics a little bit with people understanding some of these allegories of the situation that we're placed in. Because yeah, the AI is, you know, kind of flooding the lamestream, and just how societal systems have been functioning for a while. It just seems like the landscape is just going to be changed from not just the internet of things, but the people in society of things, or the internet of people in society almost. Anyways,
Yeah, they
that's
call
all.
it Internet of Bodies, to putting, you know, the devices in us instead of just the technology around us connected.
Right. Yeah. There you go. And that's pretty much all I was going to say. Go for it, Chris. Want to continue, or Theo?
Yeah, I can just say quickly that so continuing with what you were saying, Derek, is about true self-love. Also, what I was saying, I think yeah, you kind of connected the dot there, because another thing is like, yeah, if you have that true self-love, you wouldn't be just binging Netflix and watching pop culture and TikTok videos and whatever the fuck all day that have no meaning. It just eye candy, or just, I don't know, just funny videos, cat videos, whatever the fuck. Yeah, you wouldn't be just consuming that all day. And of course, know many people, let's say maybe they have work, and so after work they'll just want to zone out and just not have to do anything. But that's not true self-love. Like, you can always find time to do something creative, to do something useful, to do some shadow work, some meditation, something that will help you. And you know, when you have that true self-love, you understand that once you help yourself, you help others. You know, it goes in and out, and out and in, you know, back and forth. So beyond that positive cycle, you know, get into a positive cycle with the way you live your life, instead of that negative, you know, self-loathing cycle. Maybe you don't even see it that way. You don't even like perceive it that, you know, watching Netflix all day and just, you know, going to work and then, you know, do this and that, this cycle that most people are stuck in. They think it's, yeah, I'm just doing the best I can, or it's like, you know, no. No, you can do a lot better. Even putting, I don't know, 10 minutes a day to meditate, it's already much better than none, than zero. Even putting, you know, 10 minutes to meditate, 10 minutes to do something creative, to write something, one page in your diary, even if not one page in a book that maybe you could write for people to enlighten them with whatever experience you have. Like, we all have unique experiences, even if you think you're just your average Joe and Jane. No, like, we all have unique experiences. Like Dex mentioned, we're all unique frequencies. So like, share your gift with the world. That's true self-love. Is like, be the true unique you know, unforgivingly, and you know, yes, spread your uniqueness with the world. And you know, don't be shy about it. Don't put any masks on. It's not helping you, it's not helping anyone else.
Yeah, one thing, you know, I think Theo and Derek mentioned it last time about the black pill, and there's no point, or hating others. Like in general, oh, those sheeple, all the masses, they suck and they're stupid. So usually it's disliking them because they're, you know, they're still in the brainwashing and the mind control. So these other people, well, they could have been red pilled, right? And so they're aware of it. So they're like, oh, the masses, the sheeple, they're dumb. You know, we can refer to people who just don't get it and they're still asleep, unconscious, dead, uninitiated, unbegun. But, you know, so okay, so they're not like you that way, but are they like you another way that they're not doing? In the sense that, well, they're not doing anything to end evil, but neither are you if you're not activated. So, you could still relate to them on that aspect that you're also in that negative quality. You want to bitch about them in that negative quality that you don't have anymore, but you still have that negative aspect within you that you haven't activated and overcome, that darkness within. And so they're behaving that way, and you can say, oh, well, they're not doing anything. They're not doing anything to end the evil, or the true sense that we're bound to the free will choices of others, and that's true because of all the actions that they take as a majority, that they want the system of enslavement, even though they don't realize that it's a system of enslavement. They still want it. They still like it, or else they'd be doing something to try to end it. And since they're not, well, they like it. And so we're bound by the actions of others, and they're not doing anything, but neither are most people who can be in this mindset of like hating the other people. There's like one thing of referring to them as, yes, dead, unawakened, uninitiated, unbegun. But if you're not doing the great work, you're also in a level of unbegunness. You might have begun that inner work, but you didn't go far enough away, which is what we're talking about here. This is the facing the mirror, the barriers to initiation, that shadow work, that inner work that you haven't gone far enough into and you haven't worked through to activate and actualize, to remake yourself as a phoenix burning in the ash, burning in the flames and remaking themselves, reborn from the ashes. And there's other illusions and symbolism that we can come up with for remaking ourselves and alchemy. So a lot of people have done like work on themselves, red pill, but they can view others in a negative light. Okay, fair enough, but recognize that they're also in the position that you're still in, because yes, they're like that, they're not awakened, and you are to a certain level, but you still have more to go, and you're still not contributing to ending evil, just like they're not contributing to ending evil. So you might just be aware, but that's just your internal domain. You have to put that work outwards and try to create an influence through that content that will enlargen the voice of truth. And we're not talking about a one-on-one basis. That's going back hundreds or thousands of years, even before writing. That was the only way, which was very ineffective, and explains why not many people could have understood the level of things that we can understand now, because it was just word of mouth. And then when writing came out, well, there was still a shitload of illiteracy. Only a small percentage of people knew how to read, and even smaller knew how to write. So it was still ineffective. And then literacy grew, and then more people were able to learn. They didn't have to go to these specialized, exclusive elite schools to gain any knowledge. Books were created, and the printing press helped. Now we're in the information age. Now it's amazing, wondrous. You can just have your black slab in front of you, and you can listen to ebooks or read them, listen to them doing other things, listen to podcasts like Derek mentioned. I've mentioned that before. Do that in all your free time. I go in the shower, boom. Cooking, boom. Driving car, boom. It's all over the place all the time. And so that's how you maximize your time. You don't have time to learn. Well, you do, because all these times where you're just doing these mundane chores, that's time where your attention can take in that information from an audio source. Obviously, you're doing something, so you need your eyes usually to do that. So you're just going to listen to the audio. But the tasks are so mundane, like cooking. You're not thinking and concentrating so hard. You're doing stuff, so you're going to catch most of the information in a podcast or audio. And maybe it'll only be 50% or whatever. When you're taking your shower, when you're driving to the groceries, or driving around doing something, you go do yard work, you work in the garden. Well, those are all times where you're just doing like mechanical work that doesn't require much mental work, and your mental attention can absorb that information because the mechanical work doesn't require much of your concentrative power, and so the information can come in. Yeah, if anyone wants to say anything else, and we'll close it up after that.
I'll jump in on that because that's something that I started doing when I started this. Is I would have podcasts. I would have Mark's podcast on. I would have all kind of podcasts and lectures playing in the background. If I was going to work, hell, had a podcast playing. If I was at work, if I'm on break, I'm walking around. People think I'm listening to music. Nope, I'm listening to a podcast. I'm still the same way because how my thing is, if there was a time for you to take in information, then there's always a time for you to take in the information, as long as like your mindset wasn't focused on doing something else. So if you are at home and you're doing some chores, hey man, put on a good radio show or a good lecture and have it playing like in the background. Hell, when I'm going and cutting the grass, I'll put in my earbuds, have a podcast playing. So it's like, what are you willing to sacrifice when it comes to spending your time and hell attention? You can spend that time and hell attention listening to some garbage music, or you can spend that same time and attention and listen to something like a podcast that's very educational. And it's just something that anybody can do. Anyone can do. you know Driving and going home from work, if you have an hour, that's an hour, 5 days, hell, so that's 5 hours a week that you could be using toward learning. You could sacrifice some time sleeping, sacrifice 30 minutes, sacrifice, hell, 1 hour. you know it's like, so what are you willing to give up to get this information in? And the whole listening to podcasts and lectures, people really need to be taking advantage of that because it's so simple and easy, man. And like Chris said, you may not retain like all the knowledge, but if it's an hour podcast, you listen to it, 2, 3 times. Hell, I would have stuff playing when I was asleep. Like I wanted it in my subconscious, man. Like I always had stuff playing. Like I would even print out symbols and just like put them like in my, health consciousness, like put them in front of me just to get all this information in as much as possible. But it just comes down to how much people care and really want it bad. But to sum it up, possibly be my last round talking on this video. But again, we can come on here and talk about all these topics, how UFOs, still waiting on the government to release those secret documents, about UFOs. We can come on here and talk about remote viewing, come in and talk about all of this stuff that all these conspiratorial people are so deeply involved with talking in, but none of them still want to talk about morality, because at the end of the day, that's really that's the only thing it's about, is the morality and truth. And without those core principles, then all the information is irrelevant. UFOs is irrelevant. Remote viewing is irrelevant. How we was created is irrelevant. How the universe was created is irrelevant if we don't understand basic morality. So I'll just leave it at that, because I'm going to keep coming back to the whole moral aspect, because that's what human beings need to understand, learn, and adhere to and abide by. But thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure. Theo, Derek, it's always fun coming and chatting. It would be nice to have a new face come on, but hey, maybe next week. There's always the potential that maybe hell, the next show someone will, grow some courage and come on here.
Cheers to that, Brandon. And yeah, I forgot to hit up Sarah to see if she was available tonight, but it was fun having her on last week. That was cool. Yeah, so yeah, the whole free time stuff, and it just seems like people act like they have no free time at all, but they have certain programs and schedules and stuff that they want to pay attention to that is not, it's like they're like lying to themselves and other people sometimes, and like, I have no free time. Well, make the free time. I made so much free time in my life. I shaved off 8 hours of sleep to like 4 to 5, and then had sleepless nights because once you get latched on to certain information and stuff, sometimes you get hooked in, and you're restless, right? Brandon knows what's up for sure, man. Like,
yeah, you can't sleep. Yeah, your mind's focused, and yeah, like your mind just like, nah, I'm staying up. Yep, been there many times.
Yeah, fuck yeah. And yeah, it does take a good amount of focus. Yet, can we train our minds a little bit to? All right, so the undivided attention, right? we can divide it a little bit with, some of these little mundane tasks like Brendan you were talking about, and like cutting the grass. So like earlier today I was, editing, listening to a music mix that people can listen to as well if you need to listen to get your music fix in, but want to be aligned to some good shit. Check out my channel Awaken Your Mind, because I got tons of good stuff. But just out in the garden, I'm like running to the garden more often just to help my landlord weed out some stuff. And it's just fun because you're in the sun, and I'm like sunbathing, listening to some good stuff, and just out in nature. It's great. That sounds like cliche almost these days, but you know what I mean, right? So doing little mundane tasks, yeah, not something where you have to focus all your mindfulness on that stuff, and when you're listening to something it just you're not really paying attention, right? So yeah, that's what Brandon was talking about, and that's what I'm expounding upon a little bit. And also, hey, I know folks are still addicted to video games. Whatever. Do you have to listen to the sound effects all the time though? Can you not play podcasts in the background or some of my mixes or whatever? Right? So yeah, things to consider. And what I have, and working out. That's also something great. And yeah, I know people need that, whatever kind of motivational, high octane music sometimes. Like, do you really though? Like, like get some high octane Mark Passio up in your earbuds. All right, that'll get you pumping iron pretty fucking heavy, right? So yeah, and yeah, just focusing on building our and maintaining a good physicality, all the health aspects of our lives. It all goes back to self-care, and that is, when we focus on that, it's gonna be dissolving some of that self-loathing, I think, as well, because we go at it, going at it hard, looking yourself in the mirror, you're grilling yourself, right? Why do I hate myself so much? What the fuck, right? Is that the right approach to take it, or do you take incremental baby steps towards something? Or hey, sometimes whatever floats people's boats. People are going to operate in different ways, obviously, in whatever people's life trajectory, right? Some people can have an epiphany or an aha moment and whatever, and just like snap out of it or whatever, right? So to each their own. We're just throwing out some advice and things that have helped us and could help others. So yeah, Chris, thank you so much for putting this really cool series together. I love this idea, and I love to try to help motivate other folks as well, and myself. This has motivated me too, man. Cheers, y'all.
Well, just something just came to mind with what you said, Derek, like baby steps. Think like something holding people back from doing something like this is just that look in the mirror. Like that's that first step. I think even Mark mentioned that. It's like, when we're doing this, we're seeing ourselves all the time, right? When we live streaming, doing this kind of podcast, video podcast, yeah, you see yourself, and I think most people really are scared of that. They have that self-loathing still, even if they are already like are part of the even natural law community. We see so many people who understand those things, or at least mostly understand those natural law information, and then they still cannot get beyond that barrier of entry to the great work, like just because, yeah, they just maybe cannot stand the way they look, or they're afraid they will look silly or something, or they sound not smart enough. I don't know what. So take a good look in the mirror, because what we do here is like we're just seeing our mirror self when we're just talking, and of course we're having conversation as well. But again, just do that first baby step. Look in the mirror and accept yourself. Say good things to yourself. Like look in the mirror and say I love you. Say you're great. You have amazing potential. it sounds a bit embarrassing, but this is one of those things you gotta do sometimes, right? I mean, yeah, go out to nature, like have a connection to the earth, maybe hug a tree or two. Don't be afraid to do those things, because those are the steps to healing and to true self-love, I think. All right, so if you don't love nature, how can you love natural law? How can you love yourself? So yeah, and one thing that Brandon mentioned about morality, like that having to understand morality and the importance of it, and that's the kind of primary or priority of understanding or knowledge acquiring, or all that. Like morality is the most important thing to talk about and all that. So that brought to mind that many people think morality, they associate it, if not with religion, then they just think, oh, it's just basic. Of course, I don't want to harm anyone. Like, morality is basic. Why are you talking about morality to me? I had this experience actually. So like, people just think, yeah, like it's it's not something that is so important to talk about. Why you want to talk about it with me? Right? So it's like, how do you explain to people that actually there is a lot to talk about with morality, and that it is very important to always talk about it, to always how to say, like, put another like nail in some, I don't know, I don't have a right metaphor right now, but like make it stronger, like hammer in another nail on that sign of, like, true morality, like, every day, like to really have it solidify in people. Because one thing I can explain to people is like, look at the world, look how many wars there are still going on, look how many people still lie every day, how lying is normalized completely, which is immoral, because you're deceiving, right? You're stealing someone's truth away from them. And so yeah, there's many examples to how immoral the world is, right? What's going on with animals. So, and obviously when you have events like the COVID nonsense, then that's another example of the immorality of the world and the craziness of it. So I think once you present those examples, then people can already understand, okay, well, you're right, maybe there is something to this morality that we need to go back to and solidify better, and harp upon, and yeah, make it a wider conversation. Yeah, inspire other people to talk about it. Yeah, it's not important to talk about fucking conspiracy bullshit, flat earth nonsense shit. It doesn't help anyone. So talk about what can actually help the world.
Well, some conspiracies are reality, so those can do like a lower level, being aware of the evil, so that you know that, oh, that shit's going on. Well, let's put a stop to it. That can motivate to the higher great work. But yeah, overall, a lot of pointless stuff, or very speculative, and doesn't really change anything. So what's the point? Yeah, so we'll end it there. Thanks again for coming by, Brendan, Derek, Theo. Appreciate it. And be back next week with Great Work Launchpad episode 6. And then maybe the week after, I will have finally kicked myself in the ass to finish another part of the Law of Freedom. I think the title is like Karma and Authority, something like that. So I'm going to try to put more of my time into getting that done. And yeah, probably not going to be done next week, but the week after, I think so. Who knows? Maybe next week. Be a surprise. But planning on Great Work Launchpad episode 6, and I think we'll do disunity consciousness. I'll have that as the title within the shadow work and get into the whole aspects of consciousness, the positive and negative. We can bounce off ignorance and knowledge and the cowardice and the courage and all that stuff, and talk about disunity and unity consciousness and clear that up for people and help empower them. All right, well, have a good rest of your evening or day, as it is for Theo, and soon to be day for Derek, because he's in the wee morning hours there. So take care, everyone. Peace.